Yeah, the only thing I do want to say about the movie too, and I'm sure you guys would agree, they did a great job with the characters looking like, especially Trap Jaw. My God, when I first saw him, I was like, dude, yeah, 'cause I was like, it's him. And he was in a commercial, and the first thing I said is, look, he just jumped out of the commercial. It's like you had the action figure in the commercial. He just jumped out through the screen, and he just became real. That was my reaction when I first saw him, and I think
I,
I got more excited than I probably should have.
I was impressed when I found out that a lot of what we saw from the villain characters, especially from everybody, but especially Trapjaw, Beastman, so much of that was actually practical effects and costuming.
Mhm.
Like I know the movie's not doing well financially, but I've seen a lot of people make a very credible case that this movie should by rights be an Oscar contender just for makeup and special effects. Like
Yeah.
the costumes. Like I was amazed how much of Trapjaw and Beastman and all of that was practical costuming and effects. I thought there was going to be a good bit of CGI heavy lifting like there always is, but less than you'd think, at least with the costumes. That blew my mind. I'm very impressed. I'm impressed with the whole movie. But yeah, I think Trapjaw himself was award worthy. That was impressive. For one of my favorite villains, I gotta say, I think he had the biggest, what the kids would call, I guess, a glow up from the Filmation cartoon to the movie. Because if you remember the cartoon, he looked like a badass, but he would always get taken care of very quickly. Either somebody would just like stick something in his own gun and he'd blow himself up and go, ah,
Oh,
or
oh wow. He just like will like just bend the gun and
He
that
Man would just crimp the gun and went,
yeah, yeah. Oh my
uh,
gosh, you're triggering memories for me. You're triggering memories because I do
so
remember stuff like that.
that was the original Trapjaw in the cartoon, but now he's ferocious and threatening, and he's given Man at Arms, the most dangerous fighter on Eternia, a run for his money. And I loved how big they made him from the way he was presented. We'll talk a little bit about it because people are saying things like the new Masters of the Universe movie is literally the Filmation cartoon brought to life. No, not literally, not really. It's definitely inspired by, heavily inspired by, but there's a lot of really huge key differences that matter. Good, mostly, but yeah, that would be one of them, is that Trapjaw went from being one of the biggest bumbling fools in a rogues gallery of bumbling boobs. He became
Thanks,
the
Skeletor.
he became the most feared henchman of the movie beyond even Beastman. That was not expected by me, but I loved it. I thought that was great. Um, yeah, I thought Moss Man did a little dirty, but like I said, they had to cut a lot of him for the time of the movie, so he'll be
And
on the
they
Blu-ray.
brought in Hard from the first movie too. That was like wow. Yeah, Mark had to explain that one to me because I said, "Well, I don't think I've ever seen that character. I have no memory. My memory banks are empty here." And he
I
had to
mean,
explain the character to me.
he didn't even get a figure when they did the few figures
Yeah,
based
that
on
was
the
so
movie.
weird. It was just Gwildor, Blade, and Sauron, whatever. But they
Sora.
didn't make
Yeah,
one of Hard.
yeah. I think the money ran out or something. I don't know. I mean, they were always iffy with the rights to some of the costumes from the first place. I think Mattel only had rights to do stuff based on the concept art, not the actual movie characters.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing too, because you see, especially like Ninja Turtles and stuff nowadays, they do like the movie version. They never made a movie version of He-Man, Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella
Not
Skeletor.
more recently. Like I have all the ones they have done. Like Super 7 did the one 5 years ago. They did their movie line. That was the first time they did actual movie figures, so I made sure to get those. And then Masterverse, Mattel came out with the like 2 years ago. They came out with Dolph. It doesn't really look too much like Dolph. It looks more like Lex Luger, but a lot of great custom heads out there for
Do they
people
still
who.
get royalties off that, or I guess not, or their
I
contracts? Or...
I, I think you'd have to ask Mattel, but all I know is they got my money. I was all over that. I'm still looking for Blade. He's always the one everybody wants. See, I would have just brought Blade back for the new movie if I had to pick one guy. Karg would have probably been third choice for me. I would have picked Blade. If not him, I would have picked Saurod. But Karg was all right. They made him look pretty cool. They did right by him, I guess. But yeah, I was always a big fan of Blade. Especially we find out the actor stuntman in real life is like a real badass, and he was like, you know, a huge guy with the whip. He taught, like, anybody ever seen it use a whip in a movie? The guy who played Blade was the one who trained him. That's
Mm,
real cool. He played Skeletor during the final sword fight with Dolph Lundgren in the '87 movie because
mm.
Frank Langella couldn't do it. So the guy who played Blade did it because he's a real sword guy. So yeah, huge fan of him. But I loved Sorod because I had the toy as a kid. He shot sparks out his mouth when you flipped the switch on his back. That was fucking awesome.
The what do you call
Yeah.
it? What do you call it? The little the pop thing. I know what you're talking
It was just sparks in that case. It
about.
wasn't like the pellet gun things or whatever.
Not the Pelican, but like the big
caps.
flash cap. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was thinking of.
That
Yeah.
that was they had that with Thunder Punch He-Man. He had a ring cap backpack. I loved that figure. It was so loud. There was those little rubber ring caps, and you put them on this big giant thing on his back, and you sealed it, and then you twisted him at the waist, and the spring was so tight that it would force it back, and it would crack the caps, and it was so loud. Ow! And I'm like, wow. And I could still smell the fucking gunpowder. I could smell it every time I talk about Thunder Punch He-Man. I could, smells like that fucking bodega on the corner. You know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
That's where you bought the caps.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I
Like
bought the
the
caps. I went to
Fairgrounds
the
or the
little bodega on the
refills.
corner. They had them for a quarter. You got a whole fucking thing.
Yeah. Johnny, what were your thoughts on how the characters look and especially Skeletor and all them? Like, you know,
Well,
with the
definitely, I
effect.
think Skeletor's a big improvement compared to the '87 version of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, I still thought Skeletor looked scary, but I knew that he didn't look exactly like the cartoons, and I think this one looks a lot closer to the cartoons from as far as I remember. I think the characters look pretty good. They look pretty convincing. You could tell who's who. I guess I don't really remember most of the characters. The only people I remember is just Tita, He-Man. Uh, what's the name of that guy with the neck that stretches out?
Mecha neck.
Mecha. He literally has a mechanical neck. It's very simple, mecha neck.
Oh, Mecha Neck. Okay. So yeah, not really the best when it pertains to that, but from what I've seen, they do look very convincing. And then what's the name? Battle Cat, right?
Yeah.
Looks really
Jack.
good in the movie. I liked it.
Couple shots were a little dodgy, but I really loved that they went to the trouble. I mean, they didn't, there was a gift. I'm sure they wanted to do more, but they admitted they really spent every dollar they could giving us what is on the screen. Like,
Yeah, I did
yeah.
feel that they were time constrained. I did feel like, damn, I wanted to see more of Battle Cats. I always liked that character.
Yeah, that was a money thing. That was definitely a money thing. They kind of talked a little bit about certain things in the movie they wanted to do more of. It just wasn't there, It's
Now,
real
one thing
life.
I did like about the movie is that I know the people back then, and I'm pretty sure people are still complaining to a degree, is that He-Man's not big enough, he's not buff enough, he's not like blah 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 blah. But in my opinion, I feel like they picked a good actor for Adam slash He-Man. He acts very geeky, very quirky. So I like that. He's kind of nerdy. It kind of goes well with the character. And it kind of makes sense too because if He-Man if the actor is like a little way too jacked, then that means that the geeky nerdy Adam's gonna look too big and jacked because it's gonna be the same actor. And the cartoons, they have the logic that in the cartoons, I think Adam was like more geeky, more scrawny, and then once he's He-Man, he's like the big buff
Well,
He-Man.
not the
But
old one though. In the old one, he still was buff. It was the newer versions would make him scrawnier.
oh, okay.
Pretty much
But I think for the
changed his
movie,
shirt.
I think for the movie, they picked a good actor. I think he's a good actor. I think he plays the role pretty well.
I liked it more as Adam than as He-Man. 'Cause I thought he was cuter as Adam than as He-Man.
Well, I'll
But in
say
the
that
movie,
Now, I do have to ask real quick, Johnny, since it is fresh in your mind. What are your thoughts of seeing Skeletor in the gym and the HR office and all that?
weird and
very meta.
And there's like the
Yeah.
cup, and there's like, what is this place? Human resources. Oh, human resources. Yes. Like,
and then Adam's hot date became Skeletor.
I mean, he was forcing him to live through all his failures right before he was going to die. I thought that was pretty diabolical.
But I actually loved Skeletor in this movie because it's just like,
Oh, yeah.
what a fucking bastard! Like, damn,
Yeah. It was
like
not a
he is
good person.
so evil, man. Like,
Was not a good person.
Thank you. A villain who is a villain for the sake of being a villain that doesn't have some kind of mommy or daddy issues or no
oh, and then
betrayal.
another
He's
thing,
just evil because he thinks it's fun. There are people like that. Please give us those kind of villains back. I want my Maleficents.
and then
Absolutely.
I forgot the woman that's serving Skeletor. What's her name? Evil Lynn, right?
Evil Lynn.
Skeletor's pretty bad because he's hurting her several times in the movie.
Yeah, they were the original toxic relationship way before Joker and Harley. Way, way, way before. It was Skeletor and Evil Lynn first, going all the way back. That's canon.
That's another thing, Johnny. What do you think of that? That He-Man was trying to, like, talk reason to Skeletor. Like, look, I don't know what happened to you, or I don't know why you are what you are, or what happened. And Skeletor just found out, I'm the villain, and oh, it feels so good, and all that. Like,
I felt like he's a little corny, but I guess that's how Adam is. And it's kind of funny how he's trying to, because, honestly speaking, I mean, even though he was born in Eternia, he was still raised in Earth. So his mindset is still very like how we run things. So it's kind of funny when he goes to Eternia and he's trying to explain people all these, like HR terms and let's have a group meeting, let's talk things out and let's come up with a plan with a strategy to work together as a team. All this, awesome stuff that we do here on Earth. Like it just doesn't quite like people over there, they're thinking, what is this doofus? Like what is he talking about?
Well, what I think was great about it, there's really, to be brief, I have very few notes about the movie as a whole. I thought it was fantastic, A+ all the way through. There were some creative liberties taken from the originals. Like in most versions, this is the first version where Adam grows up on Earth. His mother's always from Earth. That's always been his bridge, but this is the first version of the story where he did not grow up on Eternia. That was a creative choice because they wanted to make it a passion of his to get to go home again. And that's a very metafictional thing this movie does, is see, people who grew up with this franchise, the movie hits a little different because we literally see ourselves in Adam and his character throughout the movie, in the sense that, okay, like when we were very little, we were born into worlds of fantasy, imagination, wonder. That's all we did as kids before school and life and everything. We sat around, we played with our toys, we played with games, and we imagined wonderful things. We watched cartoons about dragons and sorcerers and, barbarians and superheroes, and that was our whole world. That's where we lived, right? We would only visit real life occasionally, but we lived in these fantasy worlds, right? And then we got to a certain age and it was all ripped away from us. We were pulled out of that world and we were forced into the really real world with all the monotony and the drudgery and everything. And then we grow up in that world. And we try to go back to that world sometimes and we try to revisit it and we tell people about, hey, remember Ram Man or Fisto? And people say, what, you're crazy, get out of here. Why are you even talking about this stuff, you loon? Something's wrong with you. And they make fun of you for it and they shame you for it. And you just wish that everybody could see what you see and they knew what you knew about all this stuff and why it's important to you, right? But then he gets to do what we all wish we could do, and he gets to go back. And he gets to be fully one with that world that he spent his entire adult life trying so hard to get back to. Because the real life sucks. In real life, he's got to go deal with a crappy boss, and he's got to sit through whiny HR meetings and people being crybabies. And, he knows he's destined for something more than that. And he feels like if he could just get back in touch with those fantastical roots, those worlds of wonder that of when he was a child, that everything would be okay again, right? So he gets to do what we all wish we could do, is he finds the magic sword and he raises it to the sky and he says the magic words and he's home again, right? I mean, that's what we all wish we could do every single day of our lives. And suddenly he's not sitting in HR anymore. He's literally fighting monsters with his magical sword, and he gets to save the world and be the hero. And that's why this movie connects so deeply more with people of a certain age who interact with this franchise a little bit differently. It's not just a movie or just watching a cartoon we saw as kids be reimagined as a movie. It goes on a much deeper level when you actually watch the movie and see the story the movie is telling, and you realize that's your story too. And especially if you were like me, if you were a little kid getting knocked around, pushed on, and everybody, saw nothing really special about you, but you knew. And you knew one day, everybody would know. And then, if you were that little kid, if you were that Prince Adam, and you got to grow up and be a superhero like me, then again, it means so much different to you on a lot of different levels. So, yeah, for some people, it's just a movie and a great fantasy action movie. Like, I compare it to Flash Gordon, the 1980s movie. If you guys watched that, it's amazing. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it because it's amazing.
My mother does not like that movie. My dad did, though.
I loved it. I thought this was very much in that vein. That's another thing about this movie is just as much as it pays homage to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, it's also an homage to a different era of movies when we had stuff like Flash Gordon and Highlander and Jason and the Argonauts and all that kind of stuff. And, it's every bit of Valentine to that material as well. And so my wife loves that stuff. She loves He-Man and She-Ra. We connect over that stuff all the time. We both had a great time watching the movie. And she made sure we got the popcorn snack tray, the Grayskull thing. We couldn't get anything else. They didn't have anything else, but they had that. But yeah, people who grew up with this stuff in some way and engage with it in some way, the movie is just going to totally knock them out on a whole different level. I wish there was more of them because financially it's not doing great, but I thought it was perfect for what it needed to be. I didn't think it was a perfect movie. It's not the movie I would have made myself. Like, I would have made the whole movie just be like the first 20 minutes. I would have had it just be like Lord of the Rings, but with He-Man characters, because that's the style I prefer, right? But that doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean that movie would have made more money. That's just the movie I would have personally made. But I thought what they did was fantastic and perfect for what it needs to be. I wouldn't have changed hardly anything. A couple small things, but we'll get into that.
Now, what are your thoughts on like the reason they explained that why the characters had the toy names was because Adam gave them those names as a kid, and that's what he referred to them as Ram Man and Fisto and Mechaneck and all that.
Yeah, all that fisting, man. Woo.
Well, I mean, they have to be titles, right? They can't be their Christian names. It's impossible. No way that boy's mama named him Ram Man. That's just a fact. So, no, I mean, as recently as 2003, or I should say as far back as 2003, Mattel was giving characters real names and just accepting that these were nicknames or titles. People would, we know him as Trapjaw, but people who know the lore, oh, that's Cronus, for example.
Yeah.
Just call him Trapjaw because, obviously. So it's the same with all these other guys. In one version, at least of the lore, Fisto is Man-at-Arms' brother, right? So his name's not Fisto. I forget what it is, but it's more of a regular name, right? So, obviously these are nicknames and titles. I thought it was kind of clever. Adam, as a kid, he probably wouldn't have had great recall, so he probably would have forgotten their real names, but he would remember, oh, the guy with the fist, that's Fisto. I mean, they were always objectively silly names. They were named to describe the gimmick of the action figure. I think on some level you have to be allowed to wink at certain things. And you guys know me. I always prefer the serious stuff. I'm a huge Man of Steel guy, Dawn of Justice. But I also loved the Speed Racer movie, which this is very much in that vein of being a live-action cartoon. When it's done right, I love that stuff. It's just I don't like when it's done out of spite. This movie I felt was very loving, very affectionate towards the material. So that's why the humor and the winking stuff, it sits better with me than stuff like Thor, where the guy was like, oh, I hate Thor, he's stupid. That's why I made fun of it. I don't like that kind of stuff. because I feel like that's not the right way to do it. I think this movie did it right. And the toy names being associated with the characters in the way that they did it, I thought that just harkened back to that. And getting back to what Wendy said earlier, too, the fact that Skeletor was just the bad guy for the sake of being the bad guy. That is important that we get back to that. Now, I'm not against the other versions of the character's origin where he was Keldor, Randor's brother, who in some versions he was supposed to be king instead of Randor, but because he was a half Gar, he wasn't pure blooded, so they wouldn't let him be king. So obviously he got really pissed off about that and made a lot of bad choices that led to all the thing. But yeah, that's a great origin too. I don't have any problem with that origin. It wasn't the original one most of us knew as kids. In some versions, like they never explained it in Filmation, aside from Hordak was his boss for a while. That's as far back as they went with Skeletor's origins.
Yeah.
With the toys, they had a couple different ones. I have a storybook where he was a demon from another dimension, Infinita.
Yeah, I
And
remember that one.
He was trying to bridge the dimensions so his race could come over and conquer Eternia. That was one of the earlier ones. But even
We
then,
got
that's
Jack in the room here too. Going in there.
yeah. I mean, I am fine with what they did with the origin of him just being a bad guy for the sake of it, because you don't need to get that deep. I like that they hinted at it a little bit, where Adam was like trying to talk him out of it, and like we said before, about all the HR stuff and the how he tries to talk his way out of his problems before he fights people. That's the show, right? If you go back and watch the '87 cartoon, he always tried to reason with people first, and then obviously it wouldn't work. So he's like, okay, now I have to beat you up. I really wish I didn't have to. And then, oh boy, did he beat them up in this movie. But yeah, that's always been his style, though. So in this movie, they kind of found a way to explain it at least and give it a reason. He grew up like that with them telling him, oh yeah, this is how you conflict mediate. So he tries that.
And all that.
But people pretend he didn't do that on the show. Go back and watch every episode of the show. It's like Skeletor, and he would give him a whole lecture about why he shouldn't have to punch him into gravy. And then Skeletor like, nah, and then the obvious, but so yeah, the movie was great for having all of that in there. They just found a clever way to explain why he's like that, why that's his dumbass personality. But also it's important, right? Because you notice the one time in the movie where he goes in swinging and he's like, I'm going to go kill Skeletor. He loses the battle, loses the sword, his father dies, right? He had to learn the hard way that swinging first wasn't the answer and it was only going to cause more problems. So that's why when they have the fights at the end, he's a little bit more, let's try to reason first, and then he beats the shit out of everybody. And oh my God, did he beat the shit out of everybody?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, people said this guy was soft? Like, what? What He-Man were they watching? Because I've never, ever, 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 ever seen any version of He-Man beat the ever-living brakes off of people the way this guy did. Holy shit! Holy shit, that was amazing.
Now, one thing I found interesting about this movie, I don't know if the cartoon ever did it like that, but in the movie, it does show that even though Adam was living his entirety of his life on Earth, he was not a weakling because the way he fights, he uses a lot of like wrestling slash like self-defense type fighting mechanism. So it gives me the impression that while he was on Earth, he probably learned how to fight that way because he probably got bullied a lot as a kid. I'm assuming that because of how awkward he was. Always talking about his story of him being born in Eternia and all that kind of stuff.
I personally connected with the way his character was portrayed in this movie very strongly. Like,
Yeah.
I would be 6 years old. I'd be at show and tell, showing off my He-Man toys, and they'd be like, "Who gives a shit about He-Man? It's 1988." And so
Well,
I
don't
would
forget that 1992, the kids prefer He-Man over Ghostbusters.
That was weird.
Yeah.
That was weird.
We got Jack in the chat here.
Hey guys.
He is.
Hey.
Yeah. So most of us took turns on that kind of thing. Jack, do you have a story of like how you first got into He-Man?
I I remember being a really young kid. I mean, obviously, I was super, super into Ninja Turtles, and I think that was kind of like a gateway into that. That TBS lineup of cartoons because they had that, had Transformers, had Thundercats. I don't know if anyone remembers Silverhawk, like those
Yeah, I
things, and
love
then
Silverhawks. That was cool.
and then He-Man, and then He-Man. I was like, oh, okay, like, oh, it's kind of interesting. I will say one thing that which I was like, thank you, but then I was also at the very end, I was like, I was so happy they didn't have Woldor. I was like, he was like so infuriating to me as a kid.
How could anybody not like Billy Barty in anything? Billy Barty makes everything better.
I love Billy Barty. I just hate the character Woldor because he caused more issues than anything.
Now there was a thing though in the end credits where they're showing all these like outline characters. Wasn't one of them Wildor jamming on the guitar or something?
Yeah, that was the end credits. There's like, today He-Man learned a special. I'm like, no, you go away. Go. I was literally like, no.
I just noticed that Orko's not in the movie, but the ending credits.
I meant Orko. I'm
have
sorry. I was the Woldor
drawing on it.
I'm sorry. I meant Orko. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, I think wasn't Wildor kind of sort of the stand-in for Orko because they probably didn't have the technology back then to make them, float around or whatever.
Yeah.
They were
I mean, but like I said, Orko is who I meant. I just couldn't stand that character when I was a kid.
Come on.
Watching the original cartoon. He just got irritating too quickly. But then again, I was also one of those guys who I was one of those kids even watching Ninja Turtles. This may be a deep cut, and I know Wendy and Mark will know this. How irritating Norma was.
Oh, Irma.
You remember?
Irma.
Yeah.
Irma. I'm terrible with names. I apologize.
The only
Irma
character in the kids.
She was so irritating. Yeah. She was thirsty for everybody. I'm like, that girl's got problems.
I mean, sometimes they get like that when they start having too many birthdays. It's. I knew a couple Irmas,
but
a couple Irmas. I tell you what, man, they'll teach you don't know.
The weird thing about the one thing that always made me laugh about He-Man, as a kid, because I was like, even as a kid, I was like, okay, this is a little goofy, but it's fun goofy. One thing that always made me laugh about He-Man, even as a kid, was I was like, how could no one figure out he was He-Man? Because he literally did not change a thing except his shirt, and and his voice. Because when he was Adam, he sounded like this, and then I'm like, wait, that's all it takes? That's why I would laugh, because I'm like, wait a minute, if it worked for He-Man, I mean, like, it's kind of like that joke of like, it's like, I can't believe Clark Kent is Superman. You can't believe the 6'8" bodybuilding dude wearing a suit is Superman. Like that kind of joke. It's kind of like that kind of joke, but I get it's tongue in cheek. It's totally fun.
I like that they played with it at the end of the movie like they did. I thought that was great.
But there have been interpretations of He-Man where they take it way too seriously, and then there's ones where they don't take it at all seriously. And I kind of felt like this movie kind of was like right in the middle. Like it was kind of like right in that kind of good sweet spot where it's like, hey, look, we know what this is. We're not pulling a wool over your eyes. But there are things in He-Man that I do love. But there was there are things in He-Man that I do love. Obviously, I know like a lot of the characters are designed to sell toys, like which was a big thing in the 80s. But I did love that, like I said, that they introduced the names of the characters as like, that's what I used to call you as a kid, and you're like, it's like, it's Ram Man. It's like, what'd you call me? He's like, no, I call you Fisto because you go up to people and what? You know what? Never mind. I was just like, okay, that was pretty good.
No, I don't. Yeah, you do.
Nope. But I did love that. That's the other thing. And I know, Ricky, I know you will get this. Did you catch the tongue-in-cheek like nod to his origins, having his sword planted in that Conan sword statue?
Oh yeah. They had some deep cut stuff going on. Go back to the concept
Because I was
art.
like, man, a lot of people didn't get that. Because I'm like, yeah, his original origin of
I
his
know
character was
you saw
essentially
the
kind of
I know you saw the Big Jim toys in the background because they beat you over the head with that. Because that's where they
yeah,
had, the mold
yeah,
prototype was they put the Big Jim figure into a pose and they put clay all over him so he'd have muscles. And that's where the Battle Cat toy originally came from, was the Big Jim line. Like they really had made sure you got that reference. That movie's going to be one that people go back to for
right,
years playing spot the reference. That's one of the cool things about it. There's a lot of cool
yeah.
things about it, but like that, the Torak with the concept art gimmicks, the whole thing. There's so much going on in that movie for people who know. Ugh.
Oh yeah. I think the casting was pretty on point too, because like
Oh,
there was a couple of characters I was worried about casting wise. Like the biggest one was Evil Lynn, because I was worried she was going to be very like too cheesy.
she
But I
did
think
good.
that they did a good job with her.
I still think Meg
And I
Foster
was
was on points, but I really liked what they did here, though.
yeah.
It's hard to beat
I
Meg
liked
Foster.
also some of the design. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's hard to beat Meg Foster in anything, so it's not even fair. But I liked what they did with her this time. I really did.
Yeah, I like the things that they did with the designs were homages, but they were also kind of fresh in their own way. Um,
So
yeah,
you're
but
saying the Trap Jaw looked like he just jumped out of a toy aisle, man.
he did. Like the full on straight out of the cartoon. I'm like, yeah, color scheme looked the same. Weapon
Like Jack,
looked the same.
this movie has to win awards for the costuming and makeup. You got to agree with that. They got to be
Something,
serious about
something
it.
like. Oh yeah, I mean, because like, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing, and I was thinking about this too, rethinking about the movie. So obviously, they use a lot of green screen, which standard for this kind of a movie.
For this, I
But
think
what I liked about it was the green screen was like in necessary points where it wasn't like, how do I put this? If you saw Ant-Man Quantum Mania, that was like headache inducingly bad, where I couldn't look at the screen too long. Whereas this one, it felt like, oh no, there's organic stuff and it blends. I'm like, okay, that's kind of what I like about it. It's like it's aware that it's a that it's a fantasy sci-fi thing. I also liked I really liked just the guy who they got cast as Adam and He-Man. He was so damn funny. I love that guy.
I also like that Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain looked like right out of the cartoon, like exactly
Yes.
accurate and everything.
Yeah, they look
Oh,
exactly
the friend zone
like
at
them.
the end.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will say this. Now, a lot of that stuff, it goes by a little quick. They don't really linger on it because, again, they had some budget issues happening, especially that post-credit scene with the Fright Zone and everything. They admitted they threw that together at the very end for like no money, but they did really great with the limited resources they did have. And I will say, I actually, with some of the backgrounds and the way they had that kind of uncanny valley CGI sort of feel to them, one of my favorite films growing up was Dick Tracy, where they used a lot of matte paintings. They used these huge, giant matte paintings for the background. And it was such a beautiful kind of thing because it was a comic strip movie. So they literally were making that skewed vision, forced perspective reality, with these giant paintings. And I found it fascinating as a kid. And this movie kind of does the same thing with these CGI painted backgrounds. They look so unreal that it fits that perspective perfectly. And I just had those little moments where I feel like watching Dick Tracy in a way, like same idea, different technology, but you get what I'm saying. Loved it.
Yeah, it's like taking the. It feels like this is a movie. It came out at a good time because it also feels like if you like, okay, like if you look at like the Michael Bay Transformers or Ninja Turtle movies,
Oh god.
it felt like they were trying too hard to make it too sleek looking, but then also grimy at the same time. So it just did not translate right. So it's like, oh well, they're too shiny, but they're also gross, but they're also clean at the same time. And you're like, it just doesn't feel like there's a thing that's actually there.
Yeah.
And this movie actually felt like things were actually there, which is like, especially in fantasy, that is a big part of fantasy movies where you have to establish to the audience have to feel that something is there. Now, granted, obviously, there's going to be a couple times where you're aware stuff isn't there, like, you know, the spaceships and stuff like that. That's the sci-fi part of it. That's fine. But I did like that the buildings actually felt like when they were in Grayskull, it felt like when they were in Grayskull, it felt like actual Grayskull. Like it felt like the old playset, like when you would have the battle scenes. And when it was in Snake Mountain, yeah, it felt like his throne room. I was like, okay, cool. Like the only thing I wish I could have seen a little more is of Eternia itself, but I understand, you know, with flashbacks, all that stuff, you know, maybe they'll do more with it in if they do another because I did hear that they're actually still working on another movie, which I popped hard when I saw She-Ra. I'm like, She-Ra!
Now, my wife is as big a fan of this stuff as I am, as I keep telling you, and like I kind of found out about it like the day before we went, and I couldn't wait to see her reaction, and it was even better than I hoped it would be. And yeah, at this point, like that's some strong ass sequel bait right there. And that's literally something. Even that one moment is something that most of us have been waiting 40 years to see on a movie screen. So even if that's all we get, it's more than we got. So a lot of us will be happy. But most of us know we need to see more of this right now. And yeah, it sounds like, even though the box office is rather anemic, there might actually be some miracles involved. From what I hear, and this is just the rumor, it sounds like originally this was going to go straight to streaming anyway. But because they knew they had a strong product, they're like, let's put it out in theaters and see if it makes anything. So, in which case, if that's true, anything they make at the box office is essentially bonus money because they already expected to go straight to streaming. I don't know if that's true. I just heard that it might be probably true.
Amazon streaming, they said, I believe.
So yeah, if they do more, they'll go.
Well, yeah, originally I believe it was supposed to. Yeah, I heard it was originally supposed to be a streaming exclusive movie for Prime, which I'm glad they didn't, because honestly, it was a very, very good theater movie. And the fact that this is the thing right now, and it's so funny because I explained this to a bunch of people recently, and I said, because the movie executives don't care. They don't think this stuff through because they see us only as dollar figures and numbers. But the truth of it is, this past month is the first time in 8 years that there's been a $1 billion box office weekend gross or monthly gross, because people are paying to see actually interesting, innovative movies. So Michael, Obsession, Backrooms, this, and all of these different movies that are like, hey, make me want to pay, because we know as people who go to see movies ain't cheap. And you have to be picky with what you're paying to see. You can't, this isn't like how if you have a streaming service, you have an unlimited supply of, hey, I want to watch this movie, I want to watch this show. With movies, it's like you pay X amount of money, and depending on when you go, it can change time, money, snacks, what theater, all that can vary what you see, and you need to get your money's worth. So
You know what?
people that go to see movies need to actually get their money's worth. So give us a reason to go see in theaters. Like right now, Obsession. I loved Obsession. I loved Backrooms. I loved Michael, and I loved all of this. I'm like, this is the first time in a while that I've seen all the movies I've seen this month I've actually really liked. So I'm like, wow, this is a phenomenon for me for a while. I haven't had this in a long while.
I just thought about the movie prices are
money.
so high that we're always going to go back to the 90s with the whole, we can only afford to see one movie this summer. Make sure it's so and so, because that's how high the tickets are now.
I
And
would
what
say
do you
I
do,
definitely